Hello and welcome everybody, it's Matt from Cardboard Odysseys. Got another deck tech for you. This is going to be my Wyleth Soul of Steel deck that I just got done finishing second place in the last month's league for Jake and Joel Magic. Their tournament that they, or their league that they have every month, their Commander League. The stipulation was you can play, or you got assigned on a wheel, random commander from any of the commander decks that have ever been printed, and the budget was $500. Excuse me. So, $500 budget, Wyleth. Obviously, Wyleth is, well, I'll read him what he is, and then I'll explain how I did the deck. Also, if you're interested in just the deck list, it'll actually be down in the description below. I did win. I went 3-1, and I actually should have won the one game that I lost, which would have put me in first, but reading the cards explains the cards. So make sure you read the cards, because then you'll be able to understand what the card can do. Red Elemental Blast can destroy blue permanent. That's important to know for my game in particular. Anyways, so Wyleth Soul of Steel. It is a Boros commander, 1 colorless, 1 red, 1 white, 2/2 Trampler, Human Warrior. Whenever Wyleth Soul of Steel attacks, draw a card for each aura and equipment attached to it. This is obviously going to lean more towards the Voltron style, where you're getting a bunch of equipments and auras on this guy and swinging and killing one person typically at a time. But the way that I've built this deck is there's ways to kill multiple people at a time. I found in the past that you typically, as a Voltron deck, at least as this is how I see them, is they get really scary, they kill one person, and then they die. That's just how it happens. That's how I always see it happen. Now, the way I've built this deck, it's a bit more sweaty than most standard commander decks, but I still think that it's going to be not too powerful. There's no combos in the deck. Oh yeah, that was another thing. There was no combos allowed. No combos at all, which does make Voltron stronger. If you're playing in a non-combo pod, Voltron can definitely be more scary, but a lot of times, you know, comboing is going to be easier to win. So, without further ado, we'll get into each card. We'll go card by card and explain why each card is in there, and also explain some interactions. So Arden, Intrepid Archaeologist, 2 colorless, 1 white. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may attach any number of auras and equipment you control to target permanent or player. It has partner, but Wyleth does not, so you can't play it in the command zone. I actually never got to cast this card, but the equip costs of a lot of your equipment can be fairly high. So being able to just shove everything onto your commander, say it dies, you can play it, go into combat, shove everything onto it, and then hopefully that'll give it haste with one of the equipments that you have, and then you'll be able to swing. So this will just save you a lot of equip costs. It's not amazing, but it in the right situation, it could be very strong, because you don't have a ton of mana in this deck, typically. Dockside Extortionist, this card's just obviously probably one of the best red cards in Magic the Gathering history, in Commander, that is. 1 colorless, 1 white, 1 colorless, 1 red. When it enters the battlefield, you create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. It's a 1/2. It's pretty. I mean, you cast this when you can get like anything more than 4 to 5 mana, and you're pretty happy. Unless you specifically do need like 1 or 2 mana to equip or something like that for like a winning turn, you could do that. But I would try to get as much mana obviously as possible. Yeah, it's very strong, obviously. Next up is Esper Sentinel, 1 white. It's a human soldier artifact creature, 1/1. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless they pay X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power. One of the benefits of being a Voltron deck is that if you don't have your commander out, or if you can spare it, you can move some equipment to Esper Sentinel, and it actually makes Esper Sentinel's tax way higher, way higher, obviously. 1 is typically the cost that you would normally have to pay, but if you put like a +2/+2 equipment, you have to pay 3 for the first spell, and 3 is much more than 1. You know, math. And yeah, so this just makes it a strong card, and just by itself, it's just a strong card. Very strong. Next, Grand Abolisher, 2 white, 2/2. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. This was one of the goats of the deck. It just allows you to do whatever the heck you want. There's no responses that they can have, minus a few things like channel abilities, for instance. They can still channel, which, be careful, they can still channel. Like Otawara, or mainly Otawara, or Beseiju, another one. Yeah. So be careful, but other than that, just not being able to interrupt your game plan is very strong, especially when you can do a ton of different degenerate things that can do some, like, you know, Sword of Feast and Famine is pretty good. We'll just say that. In combination with extra combats too. Imperial Recruiter, this is one of the tutors of the deck. 2 colorless, 1 red. When Imperial Recruiter enters the battlefield, search your library for a creature card with power 2 or less, reveal it, put it in your hand. Dockside Extortionist obviously is a good one. Magus the Moon, Grand Abolisher, Esper Sentinel, Pure Steel Paladin, Lion Sash, Kedis. Almost everything in the deck can be fetched with this guy. So having a tutor at your fingertips in Boros is fairly difficult. And this just gets almost the entire creature suite in the deck. Oh yeah, that's another thing. I did try to keep the mana cost down low for this deck. I want it to be semi-quick. It's never going to be insanely fast, but it can be decently fast. It takes a little while to get the equipment out and then equip them. Unless you get like a Pure Steel Paladin out there. Pure Steel Paladin accelerates the deck so much, and I'm sure we'll get to that. Just a nice tutor here. Kedis, this is another goat of the deck. This is one of the things that allows you to actually kill more than one person in a turn. Wyleth can get very large, and he's drawing so many cards. Kedis says, Kedis Emberclaw Familiar, 1 colorless, 1 red. Whenever a commander you control deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. So if you hit somebody for 20, it'll hit everybody else for 20. Now granted, it's not commander damage, because it's not combat damage. Commander damage is only combat damage, but still, hitting the other 2 opponents for 20 damage is very good. And I also note that your commander is doing the damage, so anything that triggers, like lifelink for instance, that would trigger as well for hitting the opponents as well. It is a partner, but unfortunately Wyleth doesn't have partner, so you can do Art and Kedis maybe, wanted to. It's alright. But Wyleth, the draw engine on Wyleth is pretty strong. You'll typically draw anywhere between 3 and like 10 cards a turn, or a swing, I should say. Kellen the Fey-Blooded, 2 colorless, 1 red, legendary creature, human fairy, double strike. Other creatures you control get +1/+0 for each aura and equipment attached to Kellen the Fey-Blooded. And then it has a sorcery adventure, birthright boon, 1 colorless, 1 white. Search your library for an aura or equipment card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. This is just nice because it's just another tutor for an equipment or an aura, and also have a creature on the side of it. You in theory, like if your commander ever gets too expensive, this can be your like backup commander. Put a bunch of things on it, and then all your little dorks turn into pretty large creatures. Plus, Kellen does have double strike, so that's pretty nice. Next card is Lion Sash. You need some way to interact with the graveyard. This is an equipment, so it can be tutored up, but it's also a creature, which is nice. So it can also be tutored up via the creature tutors as well. So many different ways to get this. So Lion Sash is a 1 colorless, 1 white artifact creature equipment cat. And then it has pay 1 white, exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a permanent card, put a 1/1 counter on Lion Sash. The creature gets +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter on Lion Sash, and then has reconfigure, which is basically an equipped cost, but it basically turns it from a creature into an equipment while it's attached. And then if like a board wipe happens, this will stop being an equipment and turn back into a creature. So it kind of is semi-safe-ish from board wipes like that. It's mainly there for graveyard interaction, though. You need to have a way to interact with graveyards. Graveyards are strong. Magus of the Moon. There's some control-y aspects of this deck because at a $500 budget and some of the decks, there's no combos, but you definitely want to have some way of interacting. And a lot of multicolored decks, they're going to have a problem when their non-basic lands are mountains. That's what Magus of the Moon does. 2 colors, 1 red. It's a 2/2 creature. Non-basic lands are mountains. This definitely helped in a few different decks, against a few different decks, I should say. Mainly the control decks, when their blue sources all turn to mountains, they're not able to play the game basically anymore. And this can be tutored up in a multitude of ways, mainly from the Imperial Recruiter and the Recruiter of the Guard. It's nice to have. You got Mother of Runes for protection. You always got to bring your mom. Mother of Runes is a 1 white for a 1/1. Target creature control gains protection from the color of your choice till end of turn. Just remember that if you have some of the white enchantments equipped to your commander, if you choose to make it protection from white, those will fall off. So be careful. And you've got Pure Steel Paladin, another very strong card in the deck. It's 2 white for a 2/2. Whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. And then Metalcraft, equipment you control have equipped 0 as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. That equipped 0 cost is just straight up better than Arden in every way. Especially since you get to draw a card whenever equipment enters the battlefield, not necessarily just when you play one. So there's one equipment called the Blood... What is it? The Bloodforged Battle Axe, which every time you deal combat damage to a player when it's equipped, you get a copy of it, which would trigger this as well. Plus, if there's ways to flicker with like Swords of the Forge of Frontier, or no, it's Sword of Hearth and Home, maybe. Either way, when you flicker stuff, you get to draw cards. If it can do that, of course. Rabbit Battery, 1 red, 1/1 artifact equipment rabbit haste. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and then has reconfigure. You can give something +1/+1 in haste. One of the reasons why this was in here mainly is because there's something called First Blood in our league, and yeah, First Blood is half a point. So that's mainly why it's here, but it also is an equipment, and it has it gives haste, which is nice. No protection for your commander, but 1/1 in haste isn't terrible. It'll get you to draw a card if it's on your Wyleth. Ragavan was a late turn or late addition to the deck. I actually had to cut Stoneforge Mystic for it, and some other cards because of the $500 budget, of course. But Ragavan Nimble Pilfer, 1 red for a 2/1. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token and exile the top card of that player's library until end of turn. You may cast that card. Notice that it says cast. You cannot play lands, unfortunately, from the attack, but this is mainly, again, in here for First Blood, and getting treasures, of course, also is very strong. Just gives you ramp. For the first few turns, you'll probably get a few treasures. Maybe you'll get like a Soul Ring or a Mana Rock to cast, but other than that, still just a decent, solid card. Got Recruiter the Guard. I mentioned this is another one of those tutors similar to the Imperial Recruiter, but it's toughness instead of power. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a creature card with toughness 2 or less, reveal it and put it in your hand. It's a 1/1. You've got Raidane, God of the Worthy, 2 colorless, 1 white, flying Vig, 2/3. Snowlands your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped. Not that big a deal. Not a ton of people play Snowlands. This is mainly in here for this. Non-creature spells your opponent's cast with mana value 4 or greater cost 2 more to cast. This is just to give you a few more turns to kill the player that's probably going to board wipe. Most of the board wipes cost 4 or greater. Most of the scary spells cost 4 or greater, like Cyclonic Rift, etc. So having this in here is pretty great. Plus, it is a flying vigilant creature, and if your commander's not out there, or you have to find a way to fly over, you can equip your equipment to Raidane and then actually attack with this, which isn't terrible. Flying Vig already. Pretty good. You've got Shram, Senior Edificer. Whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. It's 2 mana for a 1/1. This is just another draw engine. Probably not really needed. I could see a scenario where you just go all in on Wyleth's ability and just go straight into... I mean, I think you definitely still play Pure Steel Paladin, but this could be a flex spot if you have like a better card you would like to play. But it is still very strong. Drawing a card every time you cast one of your equipment. There's at least 15-20 equipment in this deck. So that's pretty decent, but I could see it being replaced if you had like another way of... maybe even something to reduce equip costs wouldn't be terrible. Blasphemous Act, this is just board wipe. You don't really need a board wipe as Wyleth, but I think it's still required. It can get out of hand pretty out of nowhere. Having a board wipe isn't terrible because you can rebuild your board pretty easily. You just recast your commander and then equip everything to it. So this is just kind of like a oh crap button. You've got Jessica's Will. This is just a really strong, mainly used for casting your equipment and then equipping it to your Wyleth. But you pretty much always want to cast it when Wyleth is out. But yeah, so Jessica's Will, 2 colorless, 1 red, sorcery. Choose one. If you control commander, you can cast it. When you cast a spell, you can do both. Add 1 red for each card in target opponent's hand, and then you can exile the top 3 cards of your library, and you may play them this turn. So you can play... I would hold to play your land, because you might exile a land off the top. And then, of course, using the red mana to most likely cast your equipments to then equip to Wyleth, because most of the swords are 3, and then equip cost is 2. So you need at least 5 mana if you want to play and equip the sword to Wyleth if you don't have, like, Pure Steel Paladin. Yeah, so Jessica's Will is just a very strong value card. Open the Armory. There's going to be a lot of tutors in here for equipments and auras. This is just one of them. Very good value. The one colorless, one white. Search your library for an aura or equipment card. Reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. I like that it goes to your hand and not to the top of your deck because you really kind of want access to it right away. Seize the Day. This is one of the goats of the deck by far. You would want to run more than these, but we weren't allowed to have combos. If you can ever go infinite with any of the combos, you just get disqualified for the league that I'm in. So there are enchantments that are like pay 5 mana and then you get an extra combat after this. And then if you use Sword of Feast and Famine with Wyleth, every time you attack and you deal damage, you untap your lands. So then you can just pay the mana again and then have infinite combats. So you'll basically, you should win off of infinite combats, you would think. And technically semi-infinite mana, depending on how much land you have out there. Yeah, so Seize the Day is 3 colorless, 1 red. Untap target creature. After this main phase, there is an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. And then it has flashback for 2 colorless and 1 red. So you obviously you would swing. You would put this on, or then a second main phase. You would cast this, untap Wyleth, swing again. Typically, you would want to have Sword of Feast and Famine so you can pay for the flashback as well. Getting 3 attacks from Wyleth in 1 turn, you're typically drawing 4 to 5 when you're doing something like this, untapping your lands. And then if you have like Sword of Forge of Frontier or Sword of Hearth and Home, you're able to get like extra lands out there that untap. Sword of the Animist as well, because you can trigger it so that Sword of the Animist, well, Sword of the Animist is on attack, so yeah, you would just get the land and then it would untap, which is great. So Seize the Day and effects like this, you definitely want to run more of. Maybe I'll edit the deck a little bit to add a couple more in there, because you don't have to be restricted by no combos. But this is a good no combo deck. We'll say that. There's a lot of synergy, but not combo. Shatterskull Smashing. This is mainly in here to be a land, but because it is one of those mobile cards, so it has the ability to be a land and also a sorcery. So it's just a nice flex spot. So it has X and 2 red. Shatterskull Smashing deals X damage divided as you choose among 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. If X is 6 or more, Shatterskull Smashing deals twice X damage divided as you choose among them instead. This is removal. It is removal. I almost cast it as removal one time, but otherwise I just play it as a land. Because you do play only like 31 land? 33 land, 2 that are the MDFCs. So you have to be careful making sure you hit all your land drops. So being able to just pay 3 life and have it enter the battlefield untapped is great. And it's kind of like a nice flex spot. So you typically run less lands in CDH Light or CDH-ish. Or I wouldn't say this is CDH because most of the CDH are going to kill you by combo. But if you happen to be playing CDH with no combos, whatever the hell that would be, CDH combo-less. Anyways, this would be a good deck for that. Steel Shaper's Gift is a really good card. 1 white sorcery. Search your library for an equipment card. Reveal that card. Put it in your hand. It's somewhat better than the Enlightened Tutor because it goes to your hand instead of into the top of your deck. But it is limited to equipment cards instead of just artifacts and enchantments. So there are some situations where you'd rather have obviously an Enlightened Tutor. But I really like Steel Shaper's Gift. Super cheap tutor. You got a Braid, you need removal. So this is creature removal and artifact removal. So for 1 colorless, 1 red, instant, choose 1. A Braid deals 3 damage to target creature or destroy target artifact. It's pretty simple there, just need removal. You got Boros Charm, very flexible. I don't see a lot of people run this, which is kind of weird, but yeah, Boros Charm, 1 red, 1 white, instant, choose 1. Boros Charm deals 4 damage to target player or planeswalker. Note that it doesn't say creature. For the longest time, I thought this was a creature removal, and I was like holding it in my hand, ready to remove specific creatures, and it doesn't do that. Learned that today. And then permanents you control gain indestructible until end of turn. That's a great thing to prevent board wipes, or even if you just have to do it to give, save your Wyleth for the turn. It's worth it. You do it. And then alternatively, target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Double strike on a Wyleth commander type deal, or any kind of Voltron, double strike on them are typically pretty good. They're going to have a lot of on hits. They're going to have a lot of just, obviously killing people with commander damage is your goal. So turns 10 into 20, 11 into 22. You just need to do 21, so 22 is enough. And 11 seems like a high power, but there's a lot of stuff in here that pumps the power up pretty heavily. Dawn Charm, this one is mainly in here for the league because we have life saving points. It's kind of a meme, but it is a half a point if you can save somebody's life. If you save 2 people's life, it's even more. But yeah, so instant destroy, or I'm sorry, instant, one colorless, one white, choose one, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. You can regenerate target creature, which is useful for other things. If you're not using the prevent all combat damage, you can regenerate target creature and you save your commander, or save another card. Like Pure Steel Paladin's probably another spot, another part for removal, or the Grand Abolisher as well. Those are like the top three that I can see being removed besides Wyleth. And then also another thing is counter target spell that targets you. I mean, there are plenty of cards that you don't want to be targeted by. This is important. This is useful, and you can even fog somebody attacking you, and give yourself the ability to crack back if they like swing all out at you. You can just fog and have no problems there. So yeah, very strong here. Mainly in here because of the league, but I would still keep it. It's pretty good. It's very flexible. I like having the different modes. Deflecting Palm, another kind of a meme card, but I could see it being very strong. Never got a chance to use it. Anytime I had it in my hand, I was like way ahead anyways, that, you know, I was never going to use it. But Deflecting Palm, one red, one white, instant. The next time a source of your choice would deal damage to this to you this turn. Prevent that damage. If damage is prevented this way, Deflecting Palm deals that much damage to the source's controller. So somebody tries to Voltron you, hit you for like 20, you can deflect it back. Obviously won't count as commander damage or anything, but just you don't take the damage. Kind of a fog. Yeah. So this is kind of a meme. You could probably replace this with whatever, but it's still not terrible. Deflecting Swat, an amazing card. 2 colorless, 1 red, instant speed. If you control your commander, you can cast a spell without paying its mana cost, which is great. You may choose new targets for target spell or ability. This is obviously fantastic to save your stuff from being destroyed. You just redirect it somewhere else. It's fantastic. Obviously, you want to hold this in your hand, and if you have your commander up, it's one of those spells that you're all tapped out, but you can still hold this up, which is fantastic. There's a couple spells in the deck that allow you to do this, where it protects your stuff with having no mana up, which is great. You've got Disenchant. Again, removal is important, and there are plenty of artifacts and enchantments that you would like to get rid of. So just having removal is just important. You could try to go the route where you're like just going so overwhelmingly aggressive that you can just don't need these cards. But I tend to like to have responses to things that are going to mess your day up, like a Bolas's Citadel or whatever. So this is just a 1 white, 1 colorless instant destroy target artifact or enchantment. Enlightened Tutor spoke about this earlier. 1 white instant, search your library for an artifact or enchantment card, reveal it, and then put on top of your deck. Notably, you can do untap, upkeep, and then on your upkeep rather, you can cast this. It is an instant, and you can choose what to draw basically. Obviously, you still have to pay the mana, but this could be pretty important if you specifically need a 1 card, an artifact or an enchantment to your top of your deck in order to do something great. This is obviously good because you'll draw it. You can also do a thing where you cast this on your main phase 1, and then when you swing, you'll draw it with Wyleth as well. That's fine. Flawless Maneuver. This is the other card that if you have your commander, you can cast it for free. So it's Flawless Maneuver, 2 colorless, 1 white, instant. Creatures you control gain indestructible till end of turn. This is just another one of those things where you can save when you have no mana up and protect your stuff. Manatith. This is kind of a meme, but it actually is like way better than I thought it was. In a lot of games, like just Manatithing like anything is really good value because a lot of people tap out. Especially when they're having like explosive turns and they're like doing something crazy, like I Manatith Consecrated Sphinx. Like that's a very good target to Manatith. Or Manatithing a Mystic Remora was another one. Like it's pretty dang good actually. It's just counter target spell if its controller pays, unless its controller pays 1. Like I said, a lot of people like to play their stuff on curve, and then they're not just gonna hold up mana for no reason. So they're not gonna know Mana Tithe is coming. So it's one of those things where it's like you get them. I mean, Soul Ring, they turn 1 Soul Ring. As long as you go before them, you have a white up. You just Mana Tithe it. It's just pretty good. Removal, Path of Exile. We all know what Path of Exile is. Should be a staple in almost every white deck. But 1 white instant, exile target creature. Controller goes, gets a basic land, puts it in the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. You've got Pyroblast. This is one of those things where if you know you're not going to be playing against blue decks, this is a dead card. So this is mainly for more stronger pods that are going to be playing a lot of blue. Otherwise, this is just a straight up dead card, and there's really no way to get rid of dead cards in your hand besides just like discarding the hand size. So this is kind of a flex spot. I don't know. There's not really a sideboard, but this could definitely be removed if your pod just doesn't have a lot of blue. Just remove it. But it's a 1 red instant. Choose one. Counter target spell if it's a blue spell, or destroy target permanent if it's blue. This is the part that I should have noticed when I was playing against a blue enchantment Necro Duality, and I was getting Grey Merchant of Asphodel for 1 billion. So I probably should have destroyed that permanent. But yeah, useful. Red Elemental Blast is the exact same thing. Sajiri Shelter. This is one of those, also a land that it does enter the battlefield tapped. I'm not like too keen on this one. I like that it's a. I don't like tap lands almost at all. I try not to play them ever. But it's pretty good. It's one of those protection spells. So 1 colorless, 1 instant. 1 colorless, 1 white, instant speed. Target creature control gains protection from the color of your choice. So if you have a bunch of land in your hand, I would just hold this and then protect your commander if needed, or any other creature you need to protect. Swords to Plowshare, another one of those removal, like Path of Exile. 1 white instant, exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. Teferi's Protection, obviously you're going to be the target. Once you become scary, or even before you could become scary, people sometimes they seem to be scared of Ultron. I'm like almost never scared of Ultron, but it is what it is. Teferi's Protection is 2 colorless, 1 white instant. Until your next turn, your life total can't change, and you gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out, and then you exile it. So it's just very, very good. Oh shit button, and I need to not be targeted. So you just cast this and be on your way. One of the good things that you can do is if you have like a Grand Abolisher out or Conqueror's Flail, they can't. You do all your stuff, and then you just Teferi's Protection before they even have a chance to respond. So you're just saved until your next round. So pretty useful. You've got Wear and Tear. This is just another set of removal for artifacts and enchantments. The Wear destroys an artifact, and the Tear destroys an enchantment. I also did not know that you can fuse them together. Interesting. Apparently you can fuse them together. That's interesting. Nowhere on the card does it say you can cast both sides. But I've never really played much with these kind of dual cards. But apparently you can cast one or both halves of this card from your hand. That's good to know. Did not know that. Alright. Arcane Signet. That's a mana rock. Bloodforged Battle Axe. This is one of the nice equipments of the deck. 1 colorless. It gives target creature 2/0, which is not that great. And equip cost being 2 is pretty bad. However, whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you create a token that's a copy of Bloodforged Battle Axe. This on its own becomes like a draw engine over and over again. It is only +2/+0, so like it kind of makes Wyleth a little floppy. His rear end is not very big when it's only 2/0. So you typically want to hit the people that can't trade with it, or if you have like other equipment making him stronger or whatever, indestructible, however you want to do it. But once you start connecting with Bloodforged Battle Axe, it actually becomes a big of a problem, especially if you have something like Pure Steel Paladin, where the cost is then free. It just becomes crazy out of nowhere. So it's pretty nice. You've got Boros Signet, Mana Rock, Conqueror's Flail. This is basically Grand Abolisher not on a stick. Grand Abolisher as a stick. Yeah, sure. So 2 colorless artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each color among permanents you control. It's almost always going to be +2/+2 because your commander is red-white. As long as Conqueror Flail is attached to a creature, your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. Now, most notably, Grand Abolisher says that during your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. So it's not quite as good as Conqueror's Flail. Grand Abolisher shuts off treasures, it shuts off mana rocks, it shuts off anything, any artifacts. So even artifact lands as well. Grand Abolisher is wild. Conqueror's Flail is just pretty good. Just note that they're not the exact same, but close. Cursed Totem. Activated abilities of creatures can't be activated. There are no activated abilities in this deck except for you've got Mother of Runes and the Lion's Sash. But once the Lion's Sash becomes equipped, then it's no longer a creature, which is great. So this doesn't really hurt you at all, and it just hurts other people, which is great. This is one of those flex spots where it's kind of like a sideboardish card where, like, if your pod doesn't have a ton of activated abilities on your creatures, then it's not that big a deal. But realistically, it doesn't hurt you that much at all. All right, Hammer of Nazan, one of the goats of the deck. I wasn't playing it at first because it costs 4 mana, and 4 colorless mana. It's not terrible to get in this deck, but you're not playing a ton of mana rocks. And being 4 mana, that's like the highest spell you want to cast, really. But whenever it enters the battlefield or another equipment enters the battlefield, you may attach that equipment to target creature you control. So it is 4 mana, but the equip cost is kind of free, which is nice. And then it also allows your other stuff to be equipped for free as long as you're casting it. And also, it gives equipped creature +2/+0 and indestructible, so it gives your commander a little bit of protection from destroy effects. That's important. You've got Lightning Greaves. Equipped creature gets haste and shroud, and it's 2 mana. And equipped for 0. The equipment for 0 is really nice. Now, shroud is annoying. This deck doesn't run a ton of creatures, so if you play, say if you have the turn, say you have like a turn 2 Lightning Greaves into turn 3 Wyleth, you equip it, you swing. Remember that if you don't have another creature to move the boots to equip another thing to, you can't equip Wyleth anymore. Equipping is target. So you actually can't equip anything to Wyleth, or you can't enchant anything to Wyleth until you move the Greaves off. So it is fairly annoying. I don't love Lightning Greaves, but I love the equip cost of being 0, and I love the haste and the shroud. Wish it was hexproof. Obviously we have Swiftfoot boots, but I think it's worth still running. You run enough creatures, 16 creatures. You most likely will have another creature to move the boots to, and then equip, and then move the boots off. But if you find it too annoying, just don't use the Lightning Greaves and use something else. Mask of Memory, probably not needed. Probably could be another pump in, or like another like plus enchantment or artifact equipment or whatever. But it's fairly cheap. 2 colorless mana, and it has whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw 2 cards. If you do, discard a card, and it has only equip cost of 1. It's just nice having a draw engine. I mean, you already have Wyleth, but if you don't have Wyleth on, maybe he's like, you know, he's too much, you can't cast him. You could equip this to something else and then try to get some card draw then. But I could definitely see this being replaced with like maybe another sword or basically anything else. Like this is kind of a, sometimes you have too much draw, which is kind of wild. Depends though. You've got the Masterwork of Ingenuity. I think this is a bonkers card. It's just 1 colorless. You may have Masterwork of Ingenuity enter the battlefield as a copy of any equipment on the battlefield. It's just super flexible, super cheap, 1 colorless mana, and it just copies anything. Copies any of your swords, copies your even Bloodforged Battle Axe, why not? It's just great. I think it's fantastic. Super flexible. Copy your other stuff. Don't copy legendary artifacts like this one, Shadow Spear. 1 colorless legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature is +1/+1 and has trample and lifelink. You can also pay 1 colorless permanent your opponent's control, lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, which is pretty relevant actually. With equip cost of 2. Equip cost is a little high, but the actual cost of the equipment is very low. 1 colorless. And then being able to remove hexproof and indestructible from your opponent's stuff is pretty insane. So pretty great. And lifelink, of course, is great too. There's not many sources of lifelink in the deck. You could probably add like a Loxodon Warhammer or something like that for more lifelink if you want more lifelink. Not a lot of vigilance in the deck either, but I didn't find I needed it, so you know. Soul Ring, big mana rock. It's fantastic. Sunforger. This is another goat that I didn't actually get to use that much, but it is insane. So it's Sunforger, 3 artifact, 3 colorless artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +4/+0. Then you can pay a white and a red, unattached Sunforger, and you search your library for a red or a white instant card with mana value 4 or less, and cast that card without paying its mana cost, and then you shuffle. This allows you to get any of your protection spells and unequip and save your Wyleth, typically. It also allows you to counter stuff if you need to counter spell all the like the red elemental blast or the pyroblast. They are instant spells. You have just so many options. Teferi's protection also 4 or less is all of your instants. None of them are 4 or more. So you'll be able to cast any instant at instant speed as long as this is equipped. You just unattach, boom, cast it. It's fantastic. It also gives +4/+0, which is pretty strong as well. Swiftfoot Boots, this is just better Lightning Greaves. So it's 2 colorless artifact equipment. Equipped creature has hexproof and haste. Notably, hexproof, it can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. Hexproof is just 10 times better than Shroud. But this does have an equip cost of 1, which when you're playing on the curve of turn 2 Boots, turn 3 Wyleth, you can't cast this, or you can't equip this. It's on the field, but unless you have like some way of, I mean, obviously if you ramped like with the like a Soul Ring or something, you'll have enough mana. But if you didn't, then, well, unfortunate. Sword of Feast of Famine, one of the best swords in the deck. 3 colorless. Equipped creature goes +2/+2 and has protection from black and green. Whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all your lands. With Seize the Day and Sword of Feast and Famine, you'll almost certainly have 3 combats that turn. 3 combats with Wyleth, drawing tons of cards, untapping your lands every time. It's very strong. It's the thing that makes the deck feel not like Boros. I don't really like the colors of Boros, but this Sword of Feast and Famine and Wyleth's draw engine makes it feel more like Simic, which is pretty wild. Sword of Fire and Ice is the next sword here. A 3 colorless artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from red and blue. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, Sword of Fire and Ice deals 2 damage to any target and you draw a card. This one's not as strong, but being able to ping something for 2, including the player, and drawing a card is nice. Protection from red and blue is nice from like bounce spells and burn spells. However, be careful. The Seize the Day is a red spell, and you'll have to move the sword in order to target your Wyleth, so be careful. Sword of Fortune Frontier has the same problem with Seize the Day because it is protection from red and green. It also gives +2/+2, 3 colorless mana. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn, and you may play an additional land this turn. I really like this one a lot. Playing 2 lands a turn in Boros feels broken. It's fantastic. I love it. So, and it's protection from a burn spell. The green's not that important, but it does get you past blockers, which is also fantastic. Once you have a couple of the swords on, you'll typically have protection from all the colors. If you have all of the swords, you'll have all the protection from all the colors, which is fantastic. Run another one, Sword of Hearth and Home. This one's 3 colorless mana. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from green and white. And whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target creature you own, then search your library for a basic land card, put both on the battlefield under your control, then shuffle. Note that this one says basic land card and under your control, not tapped. So this one is untapped. Also, the creature, you don't have to. It's up to 1. So if you just have Wyleth, don't flicker him because you will have to re-equip everything again, unless you have Pure Steel Paladin, where you can flicker it and then re-equip everything, just so you have it like kind of like Vigilance at that point. But things you'll want to flicker, Dockside Extortionist is pretty good to flicker with this. Imperial Recruiter or Recruiter of the Guard is also great things to flicker with this. And then that's mainly it. There used to be, like I said, there used to be a Stoneforge Mystic in the deck, which you could still run if you'd like it. It's not bad. It's just it was something that I wanted to cut for Ragavan, basically. And I wanted to run Cursed Totem, so it didn't really synergize too well. But if you don't run Cursed Totem, you could run Stoneforge Mystic, and then you'll have another flicker target. You can go tutor all the stuff. Sword of the Animist, 2 colorless. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Whenever equipped creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Equip of +2 equipment cost. This one's not amazing. It's fairly expensive at 2 and 2. It doesn't sound crazy expensive, but it doesn't do a ton. It does ramp you every turn if you're able to attack. That's why it's in the deck. It's good. It ramps. It's hard to ramp in Boros, so it's probably still worth running, but it doesn't feel the strongest when it's only giving +1/+1. It gives no protection at all. So sometimes you'll feel like you maybe need to swing, and it's like dangerous to swing, so just to get a land, not that important. When you're looking at all the other swords, it's not that great. If the equip cost was 1, I'd love it. Talisman of Conviction, that is a mana rock. The Iron Crag, this is another mana rock, but is a unique mana rock, one of the new mana rocks. Whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under control, you may have the Iron Crag become a legendary equipment artifact named Everflame, Hero's Legacy. If you do, it gains equipped +3, and equipped creature gets +1, +3/+3, and loses all other abilities. So that basically means it's not saying the creature loses all the other abilities, it's saying that Iron Crag loses all of it. So it's no longer a mana rock, is what it's saying, basically. So it's just an equipped creature gets +3/+3. This one's nice to have as a mana rock early on, and then later in the game when you don't need it as a mana rock anymore, you play a legendary creature, and it no longer is a mana rock, and you can just equip it to your dude. The One Ring basically should be in every single deck known to man. I don't know of many decks that don't want the One Ring. It's just strong. It is 4 mana, so it's a little expensive for this deck, but it's fine. So if you don't know what it is, it's indestructible legendary artifact. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each bird encounter on the One Ring. And then you can tap it, put a bird encounter on the One Ring, then draw cards. Then you draw a card for each bird encounter on the One Ring. So it can slowly kill you over the course of a game. And in very rare scenarios, you can actually die from the number of counters on it. Like when you get it to 5 or 6 or 7, and then somebody deep close skates and doubles the number of counters, or if like you're playing against a proliferate deck and they start proliferating your One Ring. Yes, you are drawing more cards, but it does get to the point where like you're taking 10 or 15, at your upkeep, which that's a lot. So, but you are drawing a ton as well, so you'll probably draw an answer for it. Either way, I've seen people die to this. Not very often, but they have died to it. Otherwise, it's just bonkers. Thought Vessel, this is a mana rock, but it also gives you no maximum hand size. You actually want probably maybe even one more source of this. There is obviously Reliquary Tower, but that also Thought Vessel, because you do draw a ton of cards with Wyleth. If you get to swing it all with Wyleth, you're almost always sitting at 7+ cards in your hand. Thrawn Power Suit, another GOAT card in this deck. It's super good value for what it is. So Thrawn Power Suit, 2 colorless, equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to it, and has Ward 2. And it has equip cost of only 2, so that's not bad. 1/1 for every equipment and aura and Ward 2 is very, very good value. Very strong card. All That Glitters, another very good value enchantment. Notably, this one is similar to the last one, where you get +1/+1 for each artifact and enchantment you control. But this is Thrawn is for your what's attached to it. All That Glitters is just for everything. So if you play like a dockside and you get like 10 treasures, now you're giving your creature 10/10. At least the bare minimum 10/10. Plus the All That Glitters would be 11. So yeah, the All That Glitters is wildly strong for how low of mana cost it is. 1 colorless, 1 white, just for enchant creature. Gets 1/1 for everything you have, every artifact and enchantment. So very strong. It's almost always going to give more than 10, almost certainly. Blood Moon, this is just Magus of the Moon, but enchantment style. Non-basic lands are mountains for 2 colorless and 1 red. The global enchantment, so just useful to have. This barely affects you at all. If anything, it just makes your land base slightly more even. It's a majority white deck with a splash of red, is what I like to say. It's probably like, I don't know, 50, what is it? Let's see here. Exactly, so it's 60-40. That's what I was thinking, 60-40 split. So, more. It's closer to 50-50 than I thought. But yeah, Blood Moon is just very strong. It just shuts off a lot of decks. So, nice to have. Fire Class, very strong enchantment as well. Very good. 1 colorless, 1 white enchantment. And when it enters the battlefield, search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. You can level it up. Paying 3 mana, level 2 makes all of your equip abilities cost 2 less to activate. If you noticed, all the swords are 2. All the Bloodforged actions are 2. Almost all the equipment costs of all your equipment are 2. So this is basically pure Steel Paladin with also a tutor on it for 5 mana though. So more expensive, but yeah. The level 3, you can pay 5 mana for level 3. Whenever a creature you control attacks, up to 1 target creature blocks this combat if able. I would never do that really. You can choose to obviously in a situation if you want to level it up to 3, if you want to like kill something in particular and you have a Wyleth that can kill it, sure, that makes sense. But 5 mana is a lot in this deck. Almost always you're going to be level 2 and stay and never use it, but if you got nothing else better to do, why not? Island Sanctuary, this is a interesting card. It's one of those old cards that I'd never even heard of before I built this deck. 1 colorless, 1 white enchantment. If you would draw a card during your draw step, instead you may skip that draw. If you do, until your next turn, you can't be attacked by creatures except by creatures with flying or island walk. Because you're going to be the target of a lot of decks, because you're going to be scary, this is not terrible to have. It's kind of a meme. I could see not keeping this in the deck if you want to just be more aggressive. But this is nice to have if you have a Wyleth out there with like 4 or 5 equipments, or even a couple equipments, even 3. You can skip your draw step and not even care, because the moment you swing, you're drawing 3, 4, 5 cards. So you don't really need that draw step. So this is kind of just a free fog every turn. It doesn't do anything when you first play it, so that's a little annoying. It slows you down if you're like playing it early on and you could be playing something aggressive. So yeah, it's a little strange, but it's still pretty cool. It's decent tech. There's another red one called Smoke. It's double red enchantment. Each player can only untap one creature each turn. That's better. Realistically, I'd probably swap out Island Sanctuary for Smoke. I think that makes more sense. Each player, including yourself, only untapping one thing per turn is fine because you're almost always attacking with just Wyleth. So it basically doesn't affect you at all. You got Sigarda's Aid, one white enchantment. You may cast auras and equipment spells as though they had flash. Very strong. And also, whenever an equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach it to target creature you control. Very strong. Being able to just pay one white and just equip anything, or obviously pay the equipment cost, and getting the free equip is very strong. You want to try to avoid the equipment cost at all costs because they will slow you down. So you want cards like this, Pure Steel Paladin, and the Fighter's class in order to circumvent that. So very strong card. Spirit Mantle, one white, one colorless, enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has protection from creatures. So this can make Wyleth an insane blocker, but also could make him an insane attacker. Just bypass all creatures. They can't block. They get wrecked. You draw a bunch of cards. It's great news for you. Unquestioned Authority, another version of that card that replaces itself as you cast it. So 2 colorless, 1 white, enchant creature. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. And then enchanted creature has protection from creatures. This one isn't insane. I can see if there might be a better card to replace this with that also gives protection from creatures. I'm not entirely sure. But because it's 3 mana, it's kind of a lot. You know, like it's in a deck where you're only running 33 lands, kind of 31 with very few mana rocks. 3 mana could be all of your mana for the turn, just to give protection from creatures, no pump. But it replaces itself when you cast it, and it replaces itself when you gain a card when you draw or when you attack with Wyleth. So yeah, if there's a better card, run it. I don't know. This is the card that I found. It's pretty good. And now we're into the lands. Nothing crazy in the land slots. Fetch land. There's not even a dual land in here. You can the budget was hard. Okay, like 500. Keeping it under 500 was rough. But if you're running non-budgeted or whatever, you can go with the Sacred Foundry, and then you'll have a source. Right now, it's just 1 mountain and like some plains. So that's all you're gonna get with Arid Mesa. Axeguard Armory is a pretty cool card. It does enter the battlefield tapped, which really sucks. But for 1 colorless, 2 red, 1 white, you can sacrifice it, search your library for an aura or an equipment card, reveal them, put it in your hand. So you can draw 2 with this land. I think it's worth it. I never got to do it. I never needed to do it, but it's nice to have. Battlefield Forge, just a dual land that can ping you or tap for colorless. Buried Ruin, this helps you get back some of your equipment if they destroy it. You can sacrifice Buried Ruin and return target artifact from graveyard to your hand. There's a dual land there. That's a dual land there. That's a dual land with you reveal a mountain or plains. There's 1 mountain in the deck. You could probably go to 2. You don't really need it. There's plenty of red. Because there's like dual lands and pathways. This is one of the pathways. This is basically a dual land. You just pick which one you want to play. You've got a total of 15 planes. Reliquary Tower. Like I said, you probably want 1 more source of no maximum hand size in the deck just to try to get that a little bit more consistently. But even if you're like discarding to hand size, you're picking the 7 best cards every single time. It's really not that big a deal, but it's slightly annoying to have to discard cards. That's all I'm saying. Rogue's Passes, target creature can't be blocked this turn. This can probably be swapped out for a dual land. I've never used this, and most of the time your equipments are going to make your dude unblockable anyways. So this is kind of not really needed, but it's fine. Rugged Prairie, this is a filter land. You turn a white into any combination of white, red, or white, red. Slayer Stronghold, target creature gets +2/+0 and vigilance and haste until end of turn. I'd still keep this in there. Red, white, and taps, so it costs 3 mana total, including the Slayer Stronghold, and giving +2/, Vig, and haste is pretty solid. I don't think there's any sources of Vig in the deck, so this would be your only source of Vig. There are some equipments that you can use for Vig, like Sword of I don't know, there's one that gives it vigilance, sort of something. It gives it like Vig, Trample, Haste, and I think something else, but it's a little expensive. And it doesn't give any toughness, so that's why I didn't use it. But yeah, this is a pretty good land. Spectator Seating, another dual land. Sunbay Canyon, another dual land, but this one is the ping land, but it also allows you to, if you're a land flooded, you can draw a card. Sundown Pass, another dual land. Basilisk Collar. I think this is in the Considering? Yeah, this is in the Considering. Basilisk Collar is another good card. It's cheap to cast and then semi-cheap to equip, and it gives equipment, or equipped creature, Death Touch, and Lifelink. You know, it's probably worth running, but I think I had to get maybe something with budget or something like that. I took it off for some reason, maybe because it doesn't give any pluses. Yeah, so that's the deck. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. The deck list will be down below as well. And overall, the deck, like I said, I went 3-1, and I got second place overall in the league. I want to start doing my deck techs after I play, so I can actually give you, you know, how did the deck go? Like, I can theory craft and make a deck all day, but does it perform well? Kedis, Emberclaw, this guy right here, this guy was insane. He won me 2 of my games. Just being able to cast him when they're locked out, they can't do nothing about it because you got like a Grand Abolisher into play, and then you can just play this guy, and then you hit one guy that's wide open because you have like protection from their stuff, from all the different swords on your guy, and you hit everybody for like 10 to 15, 20 damage. It's very strong. So yeah, highly recommend Kedis. Very strong there. And other than that, the deck plays surprisingly well. If you're not limited by budget, I think the deck can be even stronger. But then if you're allowing combos, you're going to be playing with the bigger boys, and they're going to combo faster. Obviously, you could play all the better mana rocks, which will speed your stuff up, but it's never going to be as good as like Godo, Helm of the Host combo. That's just way easier to do. This is harder to do, but still, I think competitive enough. It's probably like in like competitive CDH, it's probably like a D tier, even if you're playing like all the expensive stuff. But overall, in like a normal power deck without, if you're not running in combos, this shines in non-combo groups. So give it a whirl. Let me know how you get. Let me know what you think, and any cards you guys play that I'm not playing. Am I missing some stuff? Let me know in the comment section below. And thanks for watching. Share the video, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and see you guys next time.